Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into something we all grapple with, navigating the complexities of being an adult. Instead of, bumping our heads against every single lesson, we've pulled together a collection of powerful ideas.
Sort of like proven principles.
Exactly. Think of them as proven principles to guide you toward a more fulfilling life, but importantly, your way.
That's right. We're not handing down commandments here, are we? It's more like offering a toolkit. Insight.
A toolkit for adulthood.
Yeah, exactly. Our goal is to explore these concepts together, really helping you figure out what resonates most for your own unique journey.
So we'll cover quite a bit.
We will. We'll look at different facets, understanding ourselves deeply, building strong connections, finding purpose in work, handling those difficult moments.
The messy stuff.
The messy stuff, yeah. And even some, practical everyday hacks that can actually make a real difference.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the foundation, really. Knowing ourselves, it sounds straightforward, doesn't it?
It does.
But our sources suggest that true self-understanding can be, surprisingly elusive. Why is that?
Well, what's fascinating here is just how much external noise interferes. It's constant.
Noise? Like what?
We get caught up in who we think we should be. The ideal self we picture or what others expect from us.
Right, the expectation.
And all this static just makes it incredibly hard to tune into our own authentic nature. It's like trying to hear a quiet song in a really crowded, noisy room.
So we're chasing a mirage sometimes, instead of connecting with who we really are.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And that ties into happiness, right? This idea that it's not always about feeling good, like right now in this moment.
Precisely. If we look at the bigger picture, what some might call meaningful happiness, it goes beyond just those fleeting bursts of pleasure.
Okay, so what's it rooted in?
It seems to be rooted in living in alignment with our core values. Think about the satisfaction of sticking to a really challenging workout routine, maybe, or learning a new skill.
Yeah, that feels good afterwards, not always during.
Exactly. It might not be easy in the moment, but that long-term fulfillment is profound. It comes from pushing ourselves, facing mistakes, practicing self-discipline, because it reflects what's genuinely important to us.
That makes sense. It's a deeper kind of satisfaction. Living authentically. And it's not just a solo mission, is it? Our happiness seems connected to the happiness of people around us.
Absolutely. Our sources really point that out. Contributing to the well-being of others is, it can be a deeply fulfilling experience.
How so?
It shifts our focus outward, away from just ourselves. And it can provide a really powerful sense of purpose. Plus, when we're more content, that naturally have a positive ripple effect on our relationships.
Okay, here's where it got really interesting for me. This idea that changing a habit might mean changing how we see ourselves, our identity.
Yes, the James Age example.
Yeah, that really highlights it. He felt giving up his habits, his vices, really, would turn him into someone he wouldn't even recognize or like.
And that rigid self-perception had, tragic consequences for him.
It really raises a big question, doesn't it? Can our own self-image sometimes be the biggest barrier to making a positive change?
That's such a crucial insight. Ajee's experience really shows us that if we believe a necessary change will fundamentally undermine who we are, it becomes incredibly difficult to actually do it, even if it's clearly in our best interest.
So we have to be willing to question those beliefs.
We have to examine those deeply held beliefs about ourselves and ask, honestly, are they still serving us? Or are they holding us back?
It's like our daily habits are constantly building this, what did the source call it? Invisible architecture of our life.
Yes, I love that phrase.
It's not the big grand gestures, but the small, consistent things that build the whole structure. Can you elaborate on that metaphor a bit?
Sure. Think of it like the foundation of a house. You don't notice every single brick being laid, right?
Yeah.
But those individual pieces put in place consistently over time, they create the support for the entire building. And it's the same with our daily routines.
Like how we start the day, what we eat.
Exactly. How we interact with people. These seemingly small habits accumulate. They form the underlying framework of our lives. And they often have a far greater impact than occasional big decisions.
That's powerful.
And what's also insightful is that sometimes, instead of trying a direct assault on our identity, like a frontal attack on a bad habit, it might actually be easier to just adjust our environment or maybe tweak our schedules to kind of naturally encourage the habits we want to cultivate.
Make it easier to do the right thing.
Precisely. Remove the friction.
And for anyone feeling overwhelmed by all this self-care advice out there, I loved the suggestion to treat yourself like a toddler.
Huh. It sounds funny, but it's so practical, isn't it?
It really is. No one functions well when they're too hungry, too tired, uncomfortable, bored, lonely, or overwhelmed. HALT plus a few extras.
It's a wonderfully simple framework. Just remember the basics. When we address these fundamental human needs, it creates a much stronger foundation for, well, everything else.
And speaking of understanding ourselves, character isn't about our aspirations, is it? It's shown by the choices we actually make.
Exactly. It's not who we wish we were or who we say we are. It's who we reveal ourselves to be when we're faced with decisions, big or small.
And to get a clearer picture of what truly matters to us, our sources suggest looking at, well, the hard evidence, like our calendar, our bank statements, even just looking around our living space. Where do we actually invest our time, our energy, our resources?
That tells the real story.
Yeah.
And maybe even more tellingly, what are the things we tend to hide or lie about, even to ourselves?
Oh, that's a challenging one.
It is. But those areas of discomfort, those little secrets, they often point directly towards values we haven't fully embraced or maybe aren't living up to. It's like a compass needle twitching, pointing towards where our true north might actually be.
So it's this dual thing then, accepting who we are right now, but also striving for growth.
Yes, exactly. It reminds me of that analogy. Different birds fly with different wings.
Right. We each have our own unique way to find happiness. It's a balance, isn't it? Self-acceptance, but also challenging ourselves to evolve.
That's the sweet spot, ideally.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's move into the world of relationships, which can be just as complex, if not more so.
Yes. Definitely complex. What's fascinating here, I think, is this idea that really successful relationships seem to thrive in this delicate balance.
It's a balance between what?
Between complete acceptance of the person as they are and holding genuinely high expectations for them.
The Roseanne Cash and John Leventhal anecdote, that productive tension.
Exactly. It's about loving someone fully, truly, for who they are right now, warts and all, but also believing in their potential, encouraging their growth.
So it's not passive acceptance.
No, not at all. It's an active engagement in each other's well-being and becoming. It's dynamic.
That makes sense. And thinking about supporting people, when it comes to offering comfort, it seems our first instincts can sometimes miss the mark.
Indeed. It's very common. Our first reaction when someone is upset might be to try and, minimize their feelings.
Like saying, oh, don't worry about it, or it'll be fine.
Right. Or offering quick fixes.
Yeah.
But what our sources really highlight is the profound power of simple validation.
Just acknowledging the feeling.
Yes. Just saying something like, wow, that must be really difficult, or I can see why you're upset. That can be far more comforting. It makes the person feel seen, heard, understood.
It validates the reality, even if we don't fully share it or understand it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing their experience is real for them.
And relationships, even just within our own families, they expose us to such a diverse range of personalities, right? Sometimes people we might not naturally choose as friends.
Oh, absolutely. And these interactions, even the ones that are challenging, they stretch us. They stretch our capacity for empathy, for understanding. They force us to see the world through different lenses.
Grow our perspective.
Definitely. And the way our roles shift within relationships is important too. Like that transition in parenting, moving from being an active coach, guiding every single step.
Yeah, telling them what to do.
To becoming more of a supportive cheerleader, offering encouragement from the sidelines as they navigate their own lives.
That's a big shift. And when it comes to forming new connections, like friendships, it seems that working together on something challenging can forge bonds much faster than just, say, casual chats.
That's right. There's something about shared effort, about overcoming obstacles together. It creates a powerful sense of camaraderie.
You see people differently.
You do. Is in those moments of collaboration, maybe under a bit of pressure, that we truly see each other's strengths, vulnerabilities. It builds a deeper connection.
And it's also worth paying attention, apparently, to the recurring themes in our conversations, both with ourselves internally and with others.
What topics do we keep coming back to again and again?
It's like our subconscious keeps circling back, highlighting what truly holds significance for us.
It's a clue to what's really on our minds, what matters.
Now, this one felt like a bit of a paradox. The idea that we sometimes reveal our deepest secrets to strangers, not our closest friends or family. What's going on there?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? But the absence of a shared history, and perhaps crucially, shared future expectations, it creates this unique, almost consequence-free space for vulnerability.
Less risk.
Less fear of judgment, maybe, or long-term repercussions.
Oh.
When you're sharing with someone who doesn't know your whole backstory and isn't deeply invested in your future narrative in the same way a close friend is, it's like a clean slate.
Interesting. And for anyone listening who has ever felt like they don't quite belong, it's almost reassuring in a strange way to hear that this feeling is incredibly common, universal even.
Yes, the Ringo Starr story, right?
Yeah.
Feeling like the odd one out, even in the Beatles.
Exactly. If Ringo felt that way.
It's so powerful because it speaks to that universal feeling. It reminds us that our internal experience, how we feel inside, doesn't always match the external perception others have of us or the situation. That sense of not quite fitting in. Paradoxically, it might be one of the things we all share.
It connects us in its own way. It all comes down to perspective then, doesn't it? How we frame things.
So much of it is perspective. How we frame a situation shapes our entire experience of it. That joke about the traveler and the fisherman captures it perfectly.
Right. Sometimes the contentment we're chasing is right there. We just need to shift our viewpoint to see it.
Exactly. And tied to that is recognizing that every strength we have potentially has a flip side, a shadow side. And what we perceive as a weakness in one situation might actually be a valuable asset in another.
So understanding the nuances, not just labeling things good or bad.
Right. It's about context and self-awareness.
It's like that analogy, the difference between observing animals safely behind glass at a zoo versus actually getting in there and interacting with them at a petting zoo.
Huh. Yes. Watching relationships from a distance is entirely different from actively participating, from being vulnerable, from leaning in, as the sources put it.
Leaning in.
That's how relationships grow, through active engagement, being present, being willing to connect authentically.
Okay, let's shift our focus again, this time to the realm of meaningful work. Finding purpose and maybe even joy in what we do.
This is a big one for fulfillment.
It really struck me. Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor's view that meaningful work is the foundation of a fulfilling life. And her definition of work was so broad.
Yes, that's key. It's not just about your job title or your salary.
Right.
What's so insightful about her perspective is that work encompasses any activity where we feel a sense of purpose, a sense of contribution. That could be our career, sure, but also raising a family, volunteering, community projects, even dedicating ourselves to personal growth or a creative pursuit.
Anything that feels significant to us.
Exactly. Engaging in activities that feel meaningful on a personal level.
And the best kind of work, the stuff that really energizes us, it often blurs the lines between effort and enjoyment, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The examples of Michael Jordan with his famous love of the game clause.
Yeah.
And Agatha Christie, who basically saw her writing as just continuing her childhood imaginative play.
They really bring that to life.
They illustrate how powerful intrinsic motivation can be, how it can transform work, even hard work, into something deeply satisfying.
And sometimes it's simpler things, too. The sources remind us about just having the right tools for the job.
Don't underestimate that. Even mundane tasks can become more satisfying, or at least less frustrating, when we have the resources we need to do them well. Good tools make a difference.
It's those small friction points that can really drain you over time, and apparently where you start those initial steps in a career or a project can have a surprisingly long-lasting effect. Is that about luck?
Well, luck certainly plays a role, we can't deny that, but often it's the consistent effort we put in, day after day, that actually creates the opportunities later on. It builds momentum, opens doors.
The consistency pays off.
Usually.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting paradox here, too.
Oh.
Being consistently reliable, always being effective, it can sometimes lead to being taken for granted, being invisible almost.
Like the sun analogy.
Exactly. The sun is absolutely essential, life-giving, but we mostly just notice it when it's gone, like during an eclipse.
Yeah.
Sometimes reliability makes you blend into the background.
That's a really insightful point. And thinking about group dynamics at work, or anywhere really, when responsibilities are shared, it seems there's a tendency for some people to, well...
to maybe let others carry more of the load.
Yeah, slack off a bit.
It's a known phenomenon. Shared responsibility can unfortunately lead to a diffusion of accountability. It's a common human tendency, something to be aware of in teams.
Good point. And shifting slightly, the sources also remind us that knowledge itself deepens our experience of the world.
Definitely. The more we understand about something, whether it's art, science, history, people, the richer our engagement with it becomes.
Like the example of looking at the night sky. A child sees pretty lights.
Whereas an astronomer sees galaxies, nebulae, the history of the universe unfolding. The depth of understanding transforms the experience entirely. Applies to everything, really.
Which brings us to procrastination, something I suspect most of us know something about.
Huh. Just a little.
It's not always just laziness, though, is it?
Not at all. Interestingly, work itself, being busy, can become a really subtle form of procrastination.
How does that work?
We might busily tackle a bunch of small, easy, less important tasks,
Yeah.
primarily to avoid the big, challenging, maybe uncomfortable task that we really need to do.
Productive procrastination, ticking boxes, but the wrong ones.
Exactly. And just the mere presence of an unstarted project, that big thing looming, it can be surprisingly draining on our mental energy. Even if we're not actively working on it or even thinking about it consciously, it creates this low-level background anxiety.
That makes total sense. That task just hangs over you. And perfectionism, we often think of it as a positive trait, a driver for quality.
Right, striving for excellence.
But it can actually be a massive obstacle to actually getting things done, can't it?
It absolutely can. Perfectionism often stems from an underlying anxiety, a fear of failure or criticism, and paradoxically, it often leads to lower productivity because we get stuck in analysis paralysis or keep tweaking things endlessly instead of finishing.
So understanding our own patterns here is key.
Definitely. Knowing how you work best, what triggers your procrastination or perfectionism, that allows you to adopt more effective strategies to focus your energy where it counts.
Okay, let's navigate into some of the trickier areas now. Handling life's messier moments. It feels like we're constantly faced with situations where our values are in conflict.
That's a fundamental part of being human, isn't it?
Yes,
Life constantly presents us with these dilemmas.
Like what kind of dilemmas?
Oh, wanting to embrace the present moment versus needing to prepare for the future, or the need for honesty versus the desire to protect someone's feelings. Loyalty versus truth. These competing values are always pulling at us.
And the point isn't to eliminate these tensions.
No, I don't think you can. They need to be managed. They're forces to be balanced throughout our lives, not problems with a need solution.
And sometimes the source suggests the very act of asking a question kind of answers it for you, those gut feelings.
Yes, that initial intuition. Our sources suggest that with certain fundamental questions, especially those touching on our core responsibilities or maybe ethical boundaries.
Like about parenting or drinking too much or sending that angry email.
Exactly, those kinds of things. The fact that we're even wrestling with the question often indicates an internal knowing, an awareness of the right path, even if we don't want to admit it.
So learn to trust that inner compass more.
It's worth tuning into, definitely. And when we look back on our experiences, trying to learn from them, it's important to make sure we're drawing the right lessons. The most accurate ones.
What do you mean?
Well, even seemingly simple stories, like Aesop's fables, for example, they can hold multiple layers of meaning. The most obvious moral might not always be the most profound or the most relevant takeaway for your specific situation.
So we need to dig deeper, not just take the surface meaning.
Yeah, wisdom often comes from critically examining our experiences, looking beyond the obvious, and identifying the deeper truths or alternative interpretations.
Okay. And what about those really tough decisions, where both options seem kind of bad or neither feels clearly right?
That's a common scenario. And sometimes the reason it feels so hard is simply because there isn't a single right answer.
So it's not that we're missing something.
Not necessarily. When you're faced with two equally challenging or perhaps equally appealing choices, it might just indicate that either path is viable. Each one will just have its own unique set of consequences and trade-offs.
And doing nothing is also a choice.
Crucially, yes. Choosing not to decide is a decision. It has its own consequences, often unintended ones. Indecision is an action in itself.
And our natural resistance to change, that can keep us stuck, can't it?
Oh, powerfully so.
The source suggested that if you're even thinking about making a change, chances are you're already overdue.
Huh. That rings true, doesn't it? That discomfort with the unknown, the inertia of the familiar, it's a strong force. But that internal nudge, that little voice suggesting a new direction, it's often a sign that the current path isn't quite working anymore, or maybe isn't serving you as well as it could.
Worth listening to that nudge, then. Now, shifting to strong temptations, the advice here felt quite direct, almost counterintuitive.
Yes, the idea about moderation.
Right. It suggested that trying to just moderate strong temptations often doesn't work. It's more effective to either give them up completely or just give in fully.
It's a stark choice, isn't it? All or nothing.
It does make a certain kind of sense, though. It simplifies things. It saves you from that constant mental battle, the daily negotiation with yourself.
That's the argument. And interestingly, completely giving something up, even a pleasure, it can actually lead to a renewed appreciation if you decide to reintroduce it later, carefully.
Or you might find you're actually happier without it.
Or that, yes. A surprising realization sometimes.
And it's funny how things that were forbidden in childhood
Can become these sought-after luxuries or indulgences in adulthood. It really highlights how our desires and perceptions shift over time.
But ultimately, when it comes to managing those really strong temptations, the most effective strategy isn't about white-knuckling it with willpower in the moment, is it?
No, probably not sustainable for most of us. It's more about strategic avoidance.
Yeah.
Setting up your environment, your life, to simply avoid the situations that reliably trigger those desires in the first place.
Out of sight, out of mind.
To some extent, yes. Prevention is definitely easier and more effective than relying solely on willpower to resist temptation when it's staring you in the face.
It's like that medicine analogy. Medicine is helpful, but if you misuse it or take too much...
It becomes harmful, exactly.
Yeah.
Boundaries are key. Knowing your limits, respecting them.
So understanding these quirks of human nature, these common tendencies, it can really empower us to make smarter, more conscious choices, especially when life throws us those curveballs.
Absolutely. Self-awareness is a powerful tool.
Okay, let's shift one last time to some more concrete, everyday tips. The practical hacks for just making daily life a little bit smoother.
Right. These are the small, often simple adjustments that can yield surprisingly big benefits without requiring a huge overhaul of your life.
Like what? Give us an example.
Okay, well, if you're feeling stuck or lost or just mentally foggy, sometimes simply stepping outside for a few minutes of fresh air or even just taking a short nap.
A power nap.
Yeah. It can often provide a fresh perspective, reset your brain, give you a renewed sense of clarity. It's surprisingly effective.
It's like hitting a mental reset button. Okay, what about lost items? The bane of my existence. Keys, wallet.
Join the club. The advice here is pretty straightforward. Concentrate your search first in the most obvious places. Where do you usually put them?
Yeah, they rarely levitate across the room.
Exactly. Most things haven't wandered that far. Focusing your search systematically in the usual spots saves a lot of frantic random searching and frustration.
Good tip. Okay, social awkwardness. Navigating tricky situations.
Right. So if you have to go to an event you're dreading or feel uncomfortable about, bringing a supportive friend or partner along can significantly ease the pressure. A buffer.
Safety in numbers.
Sort of. And for sensitive conversations, ones that might feel confrontational. Try walking side by side while you talk, rather than face to face. It can create a more relaxed, less intense atmosphere.
Interesting. Changes the dynamic. And the name thing. That moment you see someone you know, but the name is just gone.
Blank slate. Happens to everyone. The easiest, most polite way out. Just take the initiative, introduce yourself first, even if you think they should know you. Hi, I'm your name. It prompts them to reply with theirs without any awkwardness.
Smooth. Those are genuinely useful social tools. What about productivity boosters? Getting started on things.
Okay, one great tip is to start your day or your work session with a really small, easily achievable task. Something you know you can tick off quickly.
Why?
It builds momentum. Creates a little hit of accomplishment right away, which can motivate you to tackle the bigger things. And related to that, focus on specific, actionable steps, not just the big, vague outcome or goal.
Break it down.
Exactly. Breaking down those daunting projects into smaller, manageable actions is absolutely key to overcoming procrastination and actually feeling like you're making progress.
Okay. What about our environment? Little tweaks there.
Even small things help. Using decorative trays or boxes to corral clutter can create a surprising sense of order and calm.
Contain the chaos.
Yeah. Leaving a little extra space in your luggage when you travel can prevent that stressful, how will I fit this souvenir in moment on the way home.
Always leave room.
And just being aware of that productive procrastination we talked about earlier, noticing when you're doing busy work to avoid the main thing, that awareness helps you redirect your focus back to your real priorities.
Right. Catching yourself doing it. And gauging enthusiasm.
Yeah.
How do you know if you really want to commit to something?
Ask yourself the immediacy test. Would I be genuinely excited to do this tonight? Not vaguely someday, but right now.
Ooh, that cuts through the wishful thinking.
It can be a very powerful indicator of your true level of interest and commitment. And finally, a simple one.
Mhm.
When exploring new hobbies, don't go all out on expensive gear right away.
Test the waters first.
Exactly. Start with inexpensive, basic equipment. See if you actually enjoy the activity before making a significant investment.
Sensible. So these hacks, they're not replacements for the bigger principles, are they?
No, not at all. They complement them. They work together.
Mm.
It's about balancing those larger life aspirations and principles with practical skills and habits that make the day-to-day experience more manageable and hopefully more enjoyable.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together then, this whole deep dive. It seems to highlight that navigating adulthood doesn't have to feel like stumbling around in the dark.
Right. There are these fundamental principles, this sort of proven wisdom that we can draw upon to guide us. It provides a framework.
And the journey really has to start with understanding ourselves, doesn't it? Our own unique temperament, our values, what genuinely brings us fulfillment.
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all blueprint for a good life. It's really about discovering what works for your specific wiring, your circumstances. Self-knowledge is the bedrock.
And then in relationships, it's finding that tricky balance you mentioned, acceptance and challenge, loving people as they are while also encouraging their best selves.
And remembering that feeling of being a bit of an outsider, that sense of not quite belonging, it's actually a surprisingly common thread that connects almost all of us.
That's strangely comforting. And meaningful work defined broadly is a cornerstone, especially when you can find genuine enjoyment or purpose in it.
Mm-hmm. And learning to manage our own patterns, like procrastination or perfectionism, is an ongoing process, but one that can significantly boost our well-being and what we actually get done.
And those inevitable life challenges, the dilemmas, they require conscious management, making trade-offs. And sometimes, with strong temptations, abstinence really is easier than moderation.
Removing the trigger can be the most effective strategy. And finally, never underestimate the power of those small, seemingly insignificant daily habits.
The invisible architecture.
Exactly. They accumulate. They really do create the structure and the texture of our actual lived experience day by day.
So, to leave our listeners with something to think about, here's a final thought. Based on everything we've talked about today, what's maybe one small habit, one tiny adjustment you could implement, perhaps even starting right now?
And taking that a step further, how might cultivating a deeper awareness of your own invisible architecture, those daily choices, those routines, those default settings, how might that awareness begin to reshape your experience moving forward?